Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us for the webinar today, which is going to be on the importance of your logo as a branding method and to help you convert more sales. We're just waiting for a few more people to join the webinar, so we're going to give them about 30 seconds, but just a bit of admin while we wait. On the right-hand side of your screen, there's a questions function. If you could just message there to let me know that you can hear me, that would be enormously helpful. And that's also going to be where you can ask any questions of us during the presentation, which we'll come to at the end of the presentation. My name's Liz. I'm the Group Marketing Director for Customer Focus, and Sarah is our digital marketing expert. Sarah did the research for this presentation, and she will be running most of the webinar. And thank you guys for confirming that. Sorry, Sarah, but thank you guys for confirming.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you guys for confirming that you can hear us. That's brilliant. So without further ado, I will hand over to Sarah, and Sarah's going to run you through the bulk of the presentation.
Awesome. Thank you, Liz. All right, so yeah, like Liz said, welcome to our webinar today on how your logo can help you close more sales. I'm Sarah, and Liz was the nice lady to introduce us. Let's get started. Okay, so what does branding mean, and how does it affect a small business like yours? So branding might be, one of the most important aspects of any business because it represents people's perception of your company, like what they can expect from your product, your service, and how you're different from competitors. So one of the major components of your brand is your logo. And today we're going to go into a bit of detail about that and how different aspects of your logo, such as your color, the shape, the text, even spacing, can affect the public's perception of your business. So on this screen, you'll see a few very well-known brands, and each of them resonates a feeling, and you'll understand a little bit later why that is. But to answer the question, how does branding affect a small business like yours? Well, I think we all understand that, a professional appearance builds credibility and trust. So having a consistent brand identity will influence consumers to buy from you because it gives them, the perception that your company is legitimate. And through using distinct colors, shapes, and text, you can actually attract more customers, which will ultimately generate more business for you. And I think that's something, everybody can benefit from. All right, so the importance of branding. So branding goes way beyond just a logo or a graphic element. So when you think about your brand, you really want to think about your entire customer experience. So this includes your logo, your website, your social media experience, the way that you answer your phone, the way your customers experience your staff. So when you look at this broad definition of branding, I know it can seem a little bit overwhelming to think about what's involved in your brand. So in short, your brand is the way your customers perceive you. And a lot of promotional distributors and sign makers, they neglect spending enough time thinking about their brand in this broad sense and the impact that it can have on their business. So on this slide, you can see the top 5 reasons why diving into your brand is important. It reinforces recognition, builds credibility, it sets you apart from your competition, generates new customers, and it retains loyalty. Okay, so defining your brand. So defining your brand is kind of like a journey of business self-discovery. I know that sounds a little deep, but it can be time-consuming. It requires, at the very least, that you answer these questions. So I recommend that each of you go back to this slide at the end of the presentation and answer these questions and do some research to learn, the needs, the habits, and the desires of your current and prospective customers. So don't rely on what you think they're thinking, rely on what you know they're thinking. So that's just going to require a little bit of research on your guys' end, but just go back to this slide at the end and answer these questions and see what you come up with, and I think you'd be surprised. So building your brand. So here are some great steps to follow, if you're just starting out with your brand. But I'm sure most of you already, have a logo, a brand, but you should still follow these steps if you're considering, rebranding or simply making a few changes to see what kind of things can occur. So number 1, you need to get a great logo. So in the next slides, I'll show you, what colors, shapes, and text are best to use for your customers. Number 2, you need to write down your brand messaging. So you should ask yourself, what are the key messages I want communicated about my brand? So keep in mind, every employee should be aware of your brand attributes to keep things consistent across the board. Number 3, you want to integrate your brand. So branding extends to every aspect of your business. So that's how you answer your phone, your email signature, your website, everything. 4, you need to create a voice for your company. So this voice should be applied to all written communication and incorporated in, all visual materials online and off. So is your brand friendly? Is it conversational? Is it ritzy, more formal? I think you get the gist. 5, you should develop a tagline. So this one's optional, but I think it's a great way to write, a memorable or meaningful statement to really capture the essence of your brand. So especially being in, the promo industry or sign industry, I feel like there's so many fun ways to play around with this, and a lot of promo distributors or sign makers, they don't take advantage of this. Number 6, you want to design templates. So this might sound like a no-brainer, but use the same color scheme, logo placement, look and feel throughout your website. And you don't need to be fancy, you just need to be consistent. And it hurts me when I see some websites and their logo is stretched out or it's just not formatted properly. So these are just like little things that you need to keep in mind with logo placement. So why are logos important? So a company's logo it's basically an asset that creates an image of your brand in your customer's head. So they're worthy of being called money bringers because it's a great part of a company's earnings. So bottom line, logos can boost sales and increase profits. But their design, the color, and the font, you need to make sure that it's matched accurately. And your goals and objectives and key elements to make that an overall success. So you should design your logos keeping in mind that they're a way to generate revenue. So when people like a product, they'll remember it and the experience they had with it, and this results in brand loyalty. So this can be true for local promo distributors and sign makers as much as it is for a large international company. So, like a lack of effort in making your logo or designing it can actually haunt a company for years. So it takes time for consumers to begin to, recognize and remember a logo. But once this recognition takes, hold, it's associated with a good product, it can really sustain a company for years. And with a logo, it's all in your head, really, though, because in 400 milliseconds, a logo can actually trigger emotional responses and even behavioral change. So if you have a well-liked brand, it can actually trigger the same responses in the brain as a human relationship. So, for example, if you love your iPhone and you see the Apple logo, it can actually make you have, warm and fuzzy feelings that's similar to seeing, like, the face of an old friend. So when you think of it in terms of that, it's crazy how impactful a logo can be. So the principles of effective logo design. So here's 5 principles. I provided examples here from global brands as well as those within the promo industry. And the examples I used for the promo distributors are actually the top 10 for 2015. And I don't know if that's just a coincidence that they're, doing their logos in a great, creative way or what, but I think that it has something to do with why they're on that top 10 list. So what makes a good logo? It essentially boils down to 2 things, a great concept and great execution. So a logo needs to be simple. So simplicity makes a logo design easily recognizable, versatile, and memorable. So good logos feature, something unexpected or unique without being overdrawn. It also needs to be memorable. So following closely to the principle of simplicity, and an effective logo is achieved by keeping it simple yet appropriate. Should also be timeless. So that's not to say that you can't rebrand it in years, after you create it, but it should it should stand the test of time. So you have to think to yourself, will it be effective in 10 years, 20 years, or when your customers are changing, will it keep the attention of your target audience? Should also be versatile. So one way to create a versatile logo is to begin designing in black and white. So you have to keep in mind the more color you use, that's actually going to be the more expensive for you in the long term when you're printing. But speaking of color, next slide we're going to talk about what sort of colors evoke different emotions. Okay, so how influential is color? Right here it says the research, within 90 seconds of viewing, that 62 and 90% of that assessment is based on color alone. So what I want you to really ask yourselves is what color represents your brand personality, what color suits the characteristics of your service, and what color does your competitor use? So here's a few stats on color that I found interesting. 93% of purchasing judgments are made on visual perception. 80% think color increases brand recognition. So how can you select your color? If you look through this table, for a quick overview, what color stands out for you? So don't worry, I'm going to give you guys a copy of this presentation later so you can go back to this and see which colors best represent your company. But keep in mind, it doesn't have to be tied particularly to the promo industry or the sign industry. You should really aim to pick a color that represents your business personality. So the one that will give your customers, the right impression the first time they see it. Another great tip is to pick a color that's the opposite of your main competitor. So pick blue if your competitor has red, or pick purple if they have yellow. Because the brand strength, it lies in the ability to stand out. So picking the same color of your key competitor, it just makes you look generic. So instead you want to separate yourself from competitors and show how you're different. So choosing the right font. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. So choosing the right font is basically the difference between sounding knowledgeable and unsure. So how can you make sure you choose a font that lets your business speak with the voice it deserves? So let's just take a moment to learn from some of the world's biggest brands. So Coca-Cola and Disney, they did a curled handwriting, which kind of comes off as casual, friendly, even magical in a sense. The For Dummies example, they use uneven sizing. So this makes them be perceived as accessible, non-intimidating, whereas Citibank and HSBC, they're using a classic serif font. So they come off as strong, trustworthy, approachable. And in FedEx, you'll notice they have extremely tight spacing. So this makes them perceived as punctual, or a punctual service. So these are things that you should keep in mind when selecting the font for your logo. So fonts have a crucial role in your business in terms of honing your brand. So do you want to come off as professional or buttoned up, or do you want customers to think of you as friendlier and more approachable? Either way, the fonts you use on your website and marketing materials can help you get that message across. So in this screen, stability, objective, clean, modern, and so on. So you guys will have a copy of this, so you can always come back to this and see, which one do I really want to represent my business. And this goes into a little bit more detail about the font categories. So like I mentioned, you'll have a copy of this, and you can always go back and see which one you think really goes with your business. So at the most basic level, fonts are divided into 5 categories. So it's serif, sans serif, handwriting, script, and display. So serif fonts, those are more traditional. They have lines at the end of the stroke, so it looks professional and classic. So something like Times New Roman is one of the most commonly used serif fonts. Now keep in mind, this might not resonate with younger crowds. So if you're trying to appeal perhaps to millennials or younger audience, you might not want to select this. But if you want to emphasize your company's, heritage or how long you've been around, this could be a great route to take. So with sans serif fonts have a much more clean and modern look. So it's simple, and these work well for companies that want to send out, a straightforward message. So if you want to be seen as reliable and honest, look for Arial, Franklin Goff, those fonts. Okay, modern fonts, this is going to be more of a straightforward looking brand in a niche market. So if you are really targeting, just dentists or something, or doctors or schools, and you just have one niche market, a modern font is actually really good. It comes off as strong and dependable, and it's actually a little bit more sophisticated. Script fonts, those are elegant, have kind of a luxury feel. They're a little bit more feminine and creative. But keep in mind these cursive fonts can be difficult to read, so if your logo is reduced or shrunken, it might not be able to be read by your audience. And display fonts, those are the ones that actually are most commonly used in logos just because they're so distinctive. So which font should you choose? So to get a feel of how different fonts work or styles, you should think of your top 10 favorite logos and then analyze how the font has been used to reinforce their message. So for example, what does the clean sans serif font that Adidas use, what does that say about their brand? Or something like Coca-Cola, Disney, IBM. These typefaces, they all tell a story. So think carefully when you're choosing your font because it's giving off a subliminal message to your readers, and you need to make sure that's in line with your company's brand. So just experiment with different fonts and you'll be able to see which one's right for you and which one's wrong. And you can redefine or refine the design by trying different fonts and seeing which one looks best. All right, so I know we're covering a lot today, guys, but so in addition to the font and the colors, there's also logo shape that you need to take into consideration. So our subconscious minds, they respond in different ways to different logo shapes. So straight lines, circles, curves, jagged, they all imply different meanings. So if you have a great designer for your logo, they can use a shape to infer particular qualities about your brand. So think, for example, the Nike swoosh. So the combination of curves ending in a sharp point, it offers a strong suggestion of movement, which is an active brand, obviously. So you can go back to this slide and you can kind of analyze just would I want to use circles, squares, triangles? What are you trying to convey? All right, comparing industry branding. I think, Liz, were you going to cover this one?
Yes, I was. Hopefully everyone can still hear me. So basically we're just going to take what Sarah's been talking about and have a look at some of the most famous logos in the promo and sign industry, starting out with Staples. Staples are using red principally, and black, both of which are a very bold, direct color, and they're backing that up with a sans serif font which denotes reliability and honesty and forward thinkingness. And this square accent goes back in there with this stability message. So you've got kind of three messages here, but they're all kind of tying into the same thing, which is reliability and stability and power. And the same applies to Empire Promos. They've gone for a mostly black logo, which gives you this power and authority. They've gone for a modern font, which again denotes this strength and dependability. But they've softened those messages by using blue. Blue is a more, it's a trust-orientated color, and the circles they've got in that little logo to the left of the text, that's kind of a more positive message as we saw earlier. If you could move to the next slide for me, Sarah. Okay, so looking at this, how they extend this to their websites, Staples do a really good job of taking their logo formatting and applying it to their website as well. So what you can see is on the website, everything's organized into squares. It's reinforcing that strength and trust factor. They're using the red for exactly the same shade of red for all their highlights and calls to action, and they're using the same sans serif font. And basically that gives you exactly what to expect when you go on the Staples website. It's not incongruous at all. It's not a great user experience to have a logo that's suggesting one thing and go onto a website where the website doesn't reflect that in any way. And Staples are doing a great job of just reinforcing all of those brand messages. In my view, Empire Promos aren't doing quite as good job of this, because while they've retained the font on their banner graphics, as you can see, they're still using that modern font. The color scheme kind of loses itself a bit, and I think, in my view, again, it doesn't look quite as kind of tidy and tight as Staples looks. It's not a bad side by any stretch of the imagination, and the blue is helping to soften that very authoritative and powerful black that's in the logo. Could move forward for me, please, Sarah. So this is one which I thought was interesting. This is one company, obviously, Signorama. They're in the sign industry, and they recently rebranded. And I wanted to have a look at what would have prompted them to rebrand. So both logos share that red color, where it's about excitement. It's about generating a sense of immediacy. but the differences are almost immediately apparent after that. So in the first case, they had a display font. And the great thing about display fonts is, of course, it's unique to the brand, but the negative, potentially, is that it's not particularly versatile. So one thing about the customer focus logo, for example, as you can see at the top right hand of the screen, it's just text, which means if we want to create a banner on our website or we want to send something out, an email graphic, we can use the same font, and we're again reinforcing those brand suggestions. In our case, it's circles, it's blue, it's all about trust and reliability. Sinorama are going to struggle to do that because they're using a display font. It's not easy to write signs on offer today in the Sinorama old font, if that makes sense. And the other thing I found a little maybe incongruous about the Sinorama logo was the use of stars. Stars are one of the oldest symbols in the human history, and they have a huge amount of power, but it's all about spirituality and it's all about unity. And I'm not necessarily thinking those things when I'm thinking about buying a sign. So when they changed their logo, they changed the font to something which is more easily, I would say the new Sinorama font is more easy to use in banner graphics and things like that. On your website, on your Facebook, on your actual physical pull-up banners. And it's also got all of those associations with it, as Sarah's pointed out in the previous slides, the modern fonts denote modernity. And they've changed the stars to a triangle, and a triangle is a powerful sign. It basically, that's the kind of impression it imbues. So I think they made the right decision on balance. And it's up to the, of course, it's subjective, and if you spend a lot of time analysing these, you may come to a completely different conclusion. But what Sarah's trying to get at, and I think very successfully so, is that a lot of this is entirely subconscious. You're making decisions without even realise you're making them. Could we skip on, Sarah, to the next one? Okay, so then to sort of finish up on the looking at specific industry brands, we've got Vistaprint, and Vistaprint was the strongest one I saw for having a clear message from start to finish. You know, a lot of other people are kind of got few mixed messages in there, including ourselves, and it's quite normal. But Vistaprint have gone for the same thing on every element of their brand. They're using blue, which, as we know, denotes strength and dependability. They're using the modern font, which also denotes strength and dependability, and the triangle shape denotes power. So they're really putting across that message that they are strong, that they are the leaders of their field, and this is what they do. Whereas on the other hand, you've got Quality Logo products, which is very much a blend. So they've got the blue color for strength, but they're balancing it with an orange color, which denotes friendliness. They're using a display font, but on their website, they actually caption it with a sans serif font, which denotes reliability. And those square lines denote stability. So it is very possible to, you know, if you don't want to go the Vistaprint route of having everything, you know, or basically all of your eggs in one basket, this is who we are, this is one message, then you absolutely can blend these things into putting across the message that's best for you. Just don't overdo it, because there is a lot of power in what Vistaprint have done. So the more messages you try and cram in there, the less powerful any individual one will be. If we could just jump forward one more time, Sarah. So just briefly, just looking at again how these guys have translated their logos onto their website. The Vistaprint website follows their logo faithfully, the color scheme, the font, and even on the banner graphic, the subtle shapes behind the blue, they build on this impression of strength. QLA, on the other hand, they are really leveraging color. So they really want to kind of get that impression across of being friendly, being fun, and the blue there with dependability, just to make sure that you don't not take them seriously, albeit with the smiley guy. And Sarah, back over to you.
Okay, everybody, so I know we covered a lot today, so just to go over everything, these are the top 6 things that I want you to all take into consideration when it comes to choosing a logo or rebranding your current one. So I'm not going to read off of the screen, but you'll have a copy of this, and I just want you to all go through this, as well as I believe it was one of the first slides as well when it comes to your brand. So, you know, do a little bit of research into your target audience, do some internal research about what you really want your company to stand for. Think outside of just promotional distributor or sign maker. Think about what you stand for as an individual or a business owner and how you want that to be reflected. And just to leave you guys with one last slide, a company's reputation and respect, it's connected to their logo, and this is just one of the many things that are important to maintain your company's reputation. So your entire company should be considered your branding department. And I just want to thank everybody for joining us today. If you have any questions that are kind of more on an individual level, feel free to email me. I believe you all have my email. And you can drop me a line, let me know if you have any questions or comments about today's webinar. Liz, do you have any final thoughts?
No, I was just going to say if anybody does have any questions, you're more than welcome to ask them now or ask them of Sarah or myself after the event. Hopefully it was useful. Hopefully you guys can appreciate that there's more going on here than just your favourite colour. And if you do have the opportunity to, if you are in a position where you can, where you're in the luxury of being able to rebrand potentially, i.e. if you're a small business owner, then this is the sort of information that you really need to think hard about before you just go down with go on with kind of what you think might be right, if you will.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just looking through the questions right now.
And yes, we will be sending out the recording and the slides to everybody, including video, so you'll see everything.
All right. Thank you for joining us today, everybody, and until next time.
Thanks, guys. Have a good evening.